I'm gonna let you in on something that might unsettle you. Some of the smartest people walking around right now, people that can read rooms instantly, who predict outcomes before they happen, who somehow intuitively know when something's off, didn't develop those abilities in a classroom, rather in the same way you develop scar tissue, slowly, painfully, because they had to. And they weren't aware that gave them a rare type of intelligence. They were just told they were anxious, sensitive, or too much. So if you've ever felt like your brain works in a way that's hard to explain, like you're always scanning, processing, always 3 steps ahead in a conversation, this could describe you. Because what I'm about to explain might be the first time any of this actually makes sense. Sign 1. You read people with an accuracy that almost feels unfair, in a manner that goes beyond a cold reading or a parlor trick. It's subtler than that. Someone walks in, and before they've opened their mouth, you've already clocked something. A micro-expression, a slightly forced smile, the way their shoulders are sitting differently than last week. You're usually right, not always, but enough that it unnerves people sometimes, including yourself. Here's what's actually happening. When children grow up in environments that are emotionally unpredictable, like a parent whose moods shift without warning, the brain adapts. It becomes extraordinarily attuned to stimuli like it. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, and while it was originally a survival mechanism, it doesn't switch off so easily. It comes with you, into every room, every relationship, every weekday afternoon that feels oddly heavy. The result is an almost involuntary ability to reading others. Sign 2. You've always understood things emotionally before you could explain them logically. You knew a friendship was ending before there was any real evidence. You felt the shift in a relationship before the conversation happened. And when you'd try to explain it to someone, you couldn't, really. It just felt right. And then it was. There's a reason for this. Traumatic experiences, particularly early ones, are processed differently in the brain than regular memories. Research in trauma neuroscience has consistently shown that the body encodes emotional experience in a way that bypasses the conscious verbal brain, which is part of why trauma responses can feel so physical, immediate, and beyond language. That same encoding means your nervous system has awareness your prefrontal cortex hasn't caught up to yet. You feel the answer before you can argue for it. What may seem irrational on the surface is a different kind of knowing. Sign 3. You have an unusually high tolerance for complexity and moral ambiguity. Most people want resolution. They want the clean ending, the clear villain, the answer that wraps up in the end. And you get that, but you've also, somewhere along the way, made peace with the fact that most things in life don't work like that. People are contradictions, that someone can love you and still hurt you. Accepted that two things that feel like opposites can both be true. You might have previously called that apathy or cynicism. Growing up in environments where reality was complicated, like the person who should have protected you also scared you, forces a kind of cognitive sophistication that simple, stable environments often don't produce. You learned early that the world doesn't sort neatly. The philosopher Nassim Taleb wrote about how fragile systems collapse under uncertainty, while resilient ones adapt to it. Your mind, without anyone framing it this way, built itself to be the second kind. Sign 4. You experience empathy in a way that sometimes genuinely overwhelms you. Not the kind where you say the right thing because it's appropriate. It's more like where someone else's pain lands in your body, where a stranger's story on a screen makes your chest do something specific, and you sometimes can't figure out where your feelings end and someone else's begin. This is described in psychology as emotional contagion, the unconscious mirroring of others' emotional states. And while everyone experiences it to some degree, people with trauma histories experience it at a much higher intensity. The same hyper-attunement that makes you exceptional at reading people also means you absorb what you read. And it's worth saying here, because this video would be doing you a disservice if it didn't, that these same abilities carry a potential risk. The pattern recognition misfires sometimes. You might read threat in situations that are neutral and conflict into a harmless silence. The empathy tips into over-responsibility and leaves you carrying weight that was never yours. The constant scanning is genuinely exhausting. This isn't a flaw in you, but it is real.
Sign 5.
You self-sabotage right on the edge of something good. This one's uncomfortable to say out loud. You work towards something, a relationship, an opportunity, a version of your life that actually looks the way you want it to, and then at some point close to achieving it, something happens. You pull back. You pick a fight that didn't need to happen, convincing yourself it was going to fall apart anyway. You leave before you can be left. Psychologists sometimes call this self-defeating behavior, rooted in what's known as the window of tolerance, the bandwidth within which your nervous system can function without tipping into overwhelm. It might sound contradictory, but if safety and stability weren't the baseline of your early environment, you can actually read safety as threat. You obviously don't want to fail, but the calm in your memory was always the quiet before something broke. Recognizing this is, in my opinion, one of the more profound and disorienting things a person can do, because it reframes the behavior as a learned response, shaped by past conditions rather than a fixed flaw. Sign 6. You think about the why behind everything. Normally, this would be in a philosophical sense, but what I'm referring to is an involuntary, can't turn it off kind of way. Why did they say it like that? Why does this situation feel familiar? Why do I react this way, and what does that reaction actually mean? You narrate your internal experience with a level of analysis most people apply to work problems. This is also a well-documented outcome of early adversity. Research on what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the genuine cognitive and emotional development that can follow hardship, includes increased existential depth and a more elaborate inner life as real measurable outcomes. Viktor Frankl described something similar, the human need to find meaning in suffering. The mind that was forced to make sense of something senseless gets very, very good at searching for meaning. It doesn't always find it, but the searching changes you. Sign 7. You're deeply, almost exhaustingly self-aware, but that awareness still doesn't stop you sometimes. You know your patterns, you can name them, trace their origins, explain them to a therapist or a good friend with real clarity, and then you watch yourself do them anyway. And that gap between knowing and changing is one of the most quietly devastating things about traumatic intelligence. Because awareness isn't the same as healing. It's a start, a real one, but the brain doesn't update through insight alone. It updates through new experience, repeated enough times in a body that slowly learns. But it doesn't mean the intelligence was wasted. It means you've been doing something incredibly hard for a long time with very few people who understood what it's actually like. And maybe now, just one video in, that starts to change. One last thing, and this is only if parts of this felt uncomfortably familiar. Understanding these patterns is one thing. Actually changing them is something else entirely, and most people don't really know where to start. So I've linked something in the description and pinned comment that I think a lot of you will find genuinely useful. It's a bundle of simple, structured guides designed to genuinely help with things like overthinking, emotional regulation, focus, and building better patterns day by day. Nothing overwhelming, just practical steps you can actually follow each day, especially if your mind tends to run ahead of you like we've been talking about in this video. If that sounds like something you need, I hope you check it out.